Welcome to my channel. My name is Junior Lee and I'm a vacant land wholesaler who's closed over 100 deals in my career. My goal with this channel is to go through each deal that I've closed and give away enough information to hopefully inspire someone else to be successful in the field of land wholesaling. Today, I will cover my 13th ever wholesale deal where I was able to close on a property in Manchester, Tennessee, which is in Coffee County. This deal, which was my 13th deal, I was able to net $1,500 on an assignment fee. This lead was generated through my cold calling efforts. I was able to generate the lead by using my cold calling software, which is Batch Dialer. I utilized their triple line dialer to run a cold calling campaign in the state of Tennessee, and that is how I was able to generate this specific deal. At that time, it was my first closing in the state of Tennessee. So I had no buyers, I had no connects, no agents, I didn't even have a title company in the state. So I was able to figure out which markets I wanted to begin working on by simply being in Facebook groups. I was in various Tennessee Facebook groups and I just took time to scroll through the various posts that were put up of people requesting land. I made note of which city, county, area, zip code, whatever was being posted, and I took down a list of all of these areas. Then I went on PropStream and I set my filters, and then I just exported list in these areas. So once the list was exported and saved in my PropStream, I just took that list and I sent it to clearskip.com for the phone numbers and emails of these property owners. Once the list was returned to me, I then took that list and exported it into my softwares, which was a cold calling software and an SMS software at the time, and I began calling and texting the owners. My first point of contact with this specific owner was via cold call. They answered the phone right away and we began speaking about the property. I saw that the property had a mobile home on it, which I believed would add value to it, because sometimes in some cases you can speak to the owner of the mobile home, but the land may not be included in the sale. The owner of the mobile home may be paying the landowner a lot rent, or vice versa. You may be speaking to the landowner and there is a structure in the form of a mobile home on the land, but the owner of the land may not own that mobile home. The owner of the home could be paying a lot rent to have their home on the property. In this case, the owner of the property owned both the land and the mobile home. However, the owner did tell me that the home would need renovations to be able to have a tenant put in place. They didn't specify how much work would need to be done to the mobile home, but they did give me a rough number of $25,000 to $30,000 to make it livable for a tenant. So after going back and forth on negotiations and discussing the price, we were able to settle at $18,000 plus closing cost. I was fairly confident that I would be able to sell this property for $30,000, maybe more, because I saw some comps of turnkey mobile homes that sold for $75,000 to $85,000. So I figured if what the owner was telling me was accurate, and even if it was a little more than what they were saying would need to be done to the mobile home, that if someone bought this deal from me, there would be room to buy, renovate, and sell, or potentially keep as a cash flowing asset. Now, once the property was under contract through a purchase and sale agreement that was assignable, I had equitable interest so I could begin marketing this property. So I just referred back to those same Facebook groups and I contacted the people that were looking for land in this particular area. I talked to direct buyers and agents that had clients looking for land in this area. Once we agreed on the $18,500 purchase price, I typed up a 3-page purchase agreement and I sent it to them for their review. After they reviewed and they approved it, I downloaded that purchase agreement to DocuSign and I sent it to their email, and we both were able to sign the purchase agreement electronically. I also utilized Facebook Marketplace and I pulled a list of cash buyers from PropStream. All that I did was I searched the area, the city, and I made sure that a transaction had been done in the past year and that the person that bought the property had owned at least 3 properties. which is usually a good sign that someone is an investor and would be looking for more properties to buy. So I began marketing to the Facebook group where I found the markets to begin working in, Facebook Marketplace, and PropStream Cash Buyers List. However, the buyer actually came from the Facebook group where I found these markets. I did have many interested parties from the Facebook groups, from Facebook Marketplace, agents, and even the PropStream Cash Buyers List. So a few people went out and visited the property to take a look in person and decide if they wanted to move forward. I had a lot of interested parties, but the problem was that every person that went out to the property that had been told that I was selling it for $30,000 told me that the home was just not possible to be repaired and that it would need to be demolished or hauled away. It didn't add any value. If anything, it added an expense. So that definitely was going to drop my price from $30,000 to potentially below what I have it under contract for. So I was a bit discouraged at this point. However, one of the buyers that wanted the land didn't necessarily have the tightest margins because they were a retail buyer, meaning that they would be willing to pay top of market for the land because they were going to buy the land and put a home on it to live in themselves. Whereas an investor needs as big of margins as possible so that they can put a mobile home or build a house and sell and maximize their profit. So luckily with this particular retail buyer, they had no issues with the mobile home needing to be demolished or hauled away, and they were still interested. We were able to settle at a total purchase price of $20,000 plus closing costs, which left me $1,500 to make on my end. So I explained to them that I am a wholesaler, I have this property under contract, and that contract is assignable. I sent them the purchase agreement that I had signed to prove to them that I actually was under contract and that it was assignable. Once they understood that, I then just sent them the assignment of that contract, which is just a simple 3-page agreement as well, stating that that contract is being assigned to them and that they need to abide by everything in that contract. And it has a place in the assignment of contract for the assignment fee, which I put $1,500, bringing their grand total to $20,000 plus closing cost. So once they were ready to sign, I then utilized DocuSign again. I sent them the assignment of contract through DocuSign. Once they signed that, and I did as well, I took the purchase and sale agreement and the assignment of contract, and I sent both agreements to the title company that I had set to close in the original purchase and sale agreement. I verified with my buyer what steps were needed to be done for them prior to closing, and they let me know they weren't getting a survey, they weren't getting a soil test because it already had a septic system from the previous home. Now, oftentimes, most buyers will still want to do their own survey unless there's been one performed in the past year or two. But a lot of buyers make it good practice to go on ahead and do that survey just to verify that nothing has changed. There's no encroachments and that the land is the exact size that it's being marketed as. But this particular buyer was foregoing all of that. So I told the title company, as soon as title is clear to close, the buyers will be ready to close. So they began the title search and it came back with no issues. And so on the day of closing, the title company coordinated with the seller and the buyer to close the deal. The scheduling of closing had nothing to do with me, as it was a simple assignment from my end. So once the closing took place, the title company just sent me a wire of $1,500 even. I was very fortunate on this particular deal to still be able to do it virtually. I utilized Google Street View, aerial screenshots, and 3D outlines to have enough to present to my buyers to entice them to go and do an in-person visit themselves. The mobile home, since it was in such bad shape, they were able to just walk right through the front door because it wasn't locked and see that it really wasn't worth anything. So on the closing day, once everybody signed and the closing took place, the buyer wired the funds to the title company and they sent me my $1,500 wire. They sent $18,500 to the seller, and the buyer is still to this day the owner of that property and they live on the property. To summarize this deal, the markets were selected by simply taking a look at where the demand was in Facebook groups. I still do this to this day. Sometimes I'm on Facebook, not even necessarily looking for markets, and you will see a post in a group where someone is saying that they're looking for something very specific. They may be looking for 2 to 5 acres in this particular part of a state or a county, or they may even give you a neighborhood name, not you specifically, but they will post it in the group. And you can just make sure you take screenshots of that, or write it down, or take a mental note, or whatever it is that you need to do, and then you can begin marketing for this particular type of property. Now, that person that made that post may not necessarily be a serious buyer or be the one that's going to buy that deal from you if you're able to generate one. But if you know that 1 or 2 or any amount of people are looking in an area, they're not the only ones looking in that area. It obviously makes an area more desirable for you as a wholesaler if many people are looking in those areas. But once you see that you have certain buyers looking in any area, you can begin doing some marketing, or you can begin to connect with other wholesalers that may already be marketing in that area. You just need to build some rapport with that buyer. If you're not going to generate the lead yourself, you need to make sure that they are your buyer. So once the markets were selected through the Facebook groups, I simply went on PropStream. I made my list. You can use any software out there. I'm not really sure of any other softwares aside from PropStream. I know PropWire has a free option, but in my opinion, you get what you pay for, and everybody that's spoken to me about using PropWire lets me know that they're not necessarily satisfied with their services. But if you have to start for free, PropWire is not a bad way to go. But if you have the capability to use funds to get softwares or data or SMS softwares or a batch dialer, whatever, you should use those funds, because it will bring much more money back to you. You are able to start land wholesaling for free, but I'm not going to lie to you and say that it's easy that way. It's going to be much more difficult. I also won't lie to you and say that just because you spend money on software, data, or anything of that nature, that's not going to guarantee you a deal. You still have to get something at a good price. You have to get it under contract. You have to be able to negotiate a good deal. And on top of that, if you're doing this virtually, there are some things that are going to be out of your control, such as topography, wetlands, title issues. There's many things. So just because you spend money on skip tracing or an SMS software, that's not going to guarantee you a deal. It just will increase your odds of getting a deal because of the volume that you're able to do. Now, some of the things that I mentioned that are issues, such as topography, wetlands, floodplain, title issues, a lot of those can be avoided, or you can see them prior to even getting the deal under contract. There are other softwares. I feel like a broken record saying software, but there are softwares such as ID.com or MapRight. I'm not exactly sure what the name is now. They switched their name. It used to be MapRight.com, but now it's like land.id. I'll put a link below. I don't have an affiliate for it. It's just something I use and you can use as well. But you're able to look up parcels, tracts of land, vacant land lots, and you can actually do what's called a contour line map variation, where it lets you know when there's an elevation drop or rise every 20 feet. So if the elevation is 100 feet and it drops to 80 or it rises to 120, you can see that on the map. As far as figuring out about title issues prior to doing a title search, that may be difficult in my experience. I know there are people out there that perform title searches themselves, but a simple way to avoid issues that I ran into in my career is, once you either are about to send a contract or you have the property under contract, I would ask the seller, how did you obtain this land? And you need to know if they themselves have title insurance. If they bought it and they have a general warranty deed or a warranty deed and they have title insurance, a lot of the times you're going to be good to go. But if they tell you, I bought it at a tax sale, I seller financed this to someone and had to do a foreclosure, I bought it via quitclaim deed, those may cause issues. Some of them are definitely going to cause issues. But one of the things I mentioned, where they seller financed it and foreclosed on it, may not cause an issue. It just really depends on the circumstance. as far as purchasing at a tax sale, if they haven't done a quiet title proceeding themselves, either you or your buyer will need to do so. And a lot of buyers do not want to buy a property like that. However, I'm not saying it's impossible. I last week closed on a deal where my buyer bought it, paid me an assignment fee, and now they are going to have to do a quiet title proceeding themselves. But that's the first time that's happened in my career. Over 100 deals and over 4 years into it. I'm not saying that you can't get that type of deal on your first one. It's just very difficult. Another thing is if it was bought at a tax sale, if it wasn't that long ago, let's say 20 years or less, it may be difficult and in some cases impossible to get a title insurance company to insure that title. But I recently closed a deal where it was bought at a tax sale over 20 years ago. The owner has owned it and paid taxes on it for the past 22 years. So the title insurance company that I was working with was willing to insure based off of those facts. But again, that's the first time that I was able to close a tax sale deal, because a lot of the times that I've gotten properties under contract and even gotten a buyer for it and done the title search, the owner bought it at a tax sale 3 years ago and hasn't done a quiet title proceeding themselves. And my buyer isn't willing to pay the price that we had agreed upon, because once they close on it and they do a quiet title proceeding themselves, it will cost a minimum, depending on the area, of $3,500 up to a minimum of $10,000, and can even be more than that depending on what's found during the quiet title proceeding. So just be conscious of that and just ask either before you get it under contract or the moment you get it under contract. Because if you find out, oh, I bought it at a tax sale 2 years ago and you already have it under contract, you can quickly terminate, or you can talk to the buyers that you had in mind for this property and say, do you buy tax deeds? Will you buy it and take it through a quiet title proceeding at this price that we've agreed upon? And if not, you can terminate. If so, move forward. So, Facebook groups, PropStream. Once I had the list of the properties, I sent it to clearskip.com. And then once the list was back, I began texting and calling it. So my SMS software that I currently use is Launch Control, and my cold calling software is Batch Dialer, and I use their triple line dialer. That way it is able to dial 3 numbers at a time. And to be honest, at this point in my career, I personally don't do the day-to-day texting or the day-to-day cold calling. I have a virtual assistant that handles both of those for me. And the final software that was used to do this deal was DocuSign. Now, I've mentioned all these softwares. Again, you don't need any of these to be able to wholesale land. It obviously helps. And at this point in my career, I wouldn't not use these softwares. I wouldn't not use DocuSign. I do this virtually, so I definitely need DocuSign. But you can definitely use Google Docs to type your contract. If you get a template or you already have a contract, you can utilize that to type up your purchase agreement, and you can email it directly to your seller and request that they print it, sign it, and scan it back to you. Then you yourself can print it if you have access to a printer, or you can go to a FedEx or UPS, and that will obviously cost money, but it's not a lot of money, $5 or less to print 3 pages, sign it, and scan it back to them. So you can do it for free, but these softwares definitely help. Now I'm going to answer some frequently asked questions that I have been receiving over the past few weeks from people viewing my YouTube, because when I'm doing these deal breakdowns, a lot of the times I'm not getting into specific details, so I'm going to try to incorporate answering questions at the end of these videos from now on. So the first question that I get a lot is, can this really be done virtually without ever seeing the properties? And the answer is absolutely. Now, obviously, in some cases, it does help if you are local to the property or you have the means to go to the property. But I've closed over 100 transactions and I've only seen one of the properties in person. Reason being was that my wife's uncle bought the deal from me, so we just happened to go and see the property with him just to see it. I did not have to, I just wanted to, and we took a look at it. And on that deal, actually, he was able to get an old F100 or F150, And so that was really, really cool. And looking back on it, if I would have known better, I would have tried to keep that truck for myself. But I don't really mind that he was able to get a truck and a great deal that he then turned around and sold and made money. But the answer is yes, you can do all of this virtually. You can do this virtually through the means of doing a joint venture with other wholesalers. If you need to start for free, you can meet buyers via Facebook, PropStream, real estate agents. You never have to be in person. Now, I'm not saying don't ever get around people, don't ever get in person, because doing this virtually, sometimes it's easy to be a hermit crab and stay locked in your room in front of your computers, because it starts to feel like you're playing a video game at a certain point. But obviously getting out and meeting people and shaking hands and really building rapport with people and relationships is beneficial, and I have done that for sure. But as far as going to the property, you do not have to. You can, but you do not have to. I've closed transactions in 9 different states, some of which I've never personally been to myself, such as Texas and Idaho. But yes, it can be done virtually. You are able to generate leads virtually. You're able to get them under contract virtually. You're able to analyze them virtually, and you're definitely able to sell them virtually, because your buyer will go to the property in person. Now, don't take that as you never have to go to land. You can if you want to, and you definitely will learn a lot by doing so. I have gone out to projects with some of my buyers that weren't necessarily deals that I sold them, but I've went and I've walked deals, so that way I was able to really conceptualize what it is that a buyer is looking at on these infill spec lots and even larger tracts of land. Another frequently asked question is, can I do this for free? And yes, I just mentioned that in the video and even in the last question. You are able to do it for free. I won't lie and say that it'll be easy. When I got started in 2020, it was much easier to start for free. You could get, potentially a list from another wholesaler, and you could really hustle and call and text from your personal cell phone. I do know that there are risks with that now. First of all, just having your personal cell phone number as the front line of defense, and your personal cell phone could get marked as spam, which will, shut down the one phone. If you have multiple phones, I guess, not the one phone, but most people have one phone, one number. And if that number gets marked as spam and you're unable to use your iMessage or make phone calls to your family, your friends, that won't be good. So it is possible to start for free. How I personally would start for free in this day and age is I would partner up with another wholesaler who's already generating leads and let them know, hey, I can go and find buyers in markets you already are working in markets you're not working in, whatever the case may be, because it is easier to generate a buyer for free than it is sellers. Because I know people will wholesale MLS properties, but my practice has always been off-market. The reason I like off-market wholesaling is because the deal is exclusive to you. So you have something that no one else has. You have this deal. If you're the one on contract, you're able to bring this deal and say, hey, I know you haven't seen this anywhere because it's not on the MLS. It hasn't been listed. I have this property under contract. I'm showing it to you. You are going to be the first person to make a decision on this. Whereas on the MLS, if you get it under contract, they can know that you don't have the means to close on the property, so that buyer could potentially wait you out, or if you don't get it at deep enough of a discount, it may not make sense for them. You can wholesale on market properties. I just personally don't do that practice at all. But yes, it is possible to start for free. The easiest way to start for free is to generate the buyer. So you can do that through Facebook groups, Facebook Marketplace, going to local meetups, anything like that, and just let people know that you are looking to provide off-market vacant land opportunities for land buyers. Once you build the rapport and the relationship with that buyer, now you can report back to the wholesaler that has the money to generate off-market leads, and let them know, hey, here's this person's buy box, or hey, if you get a good deal under contract, my buyer will take a look at it ASAP. So the way you would keep yourself protected in that instance is make sure that the person you're dealing with is actually under contract with the land and they're the ones that are direct to the seller. I would advise not to get involved in daisy chains because it can quickly ruin your relationship. If you bring a deal to a buyer that they've already seen from other wholesalers, that will make you look not so professional. You want to have an understood relationship with the wholesaler. Hey, once this is under contract, I want to be the exclusive JV partner on this deal to show it to my buyer. If they pass, we can terminate the JV as soon as possible so that way you can go on and try to find a buyer for it. But if they want to move forward with it, I want to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted so that way as soon as they want to move forward, we can assign it to them and that's how you can get paid. Now, as soon as you get paid, pour that money right back into your business in the form of data, softwares, whatever it is that you choose to do, reinvest into yourself and into your business. The next question that I've been asked is, do I need an LLC? And the answer is no. I did my first 5 or 6 deals in my personal name. You do not need an LLC. It helps. You should get an LLC. You should get a business bank account. You should get an EIN because the problem is, and I ran into this, once you start closing deals and this becomes your thing, if you then open your LLC and it took you 6 months to do a few deals or 6 months to even do a deal, your LLC starts the day you form it. Now, you're not going to be able to, if you're doing this full time like I do, you won't be able to get a home loan or any type of other loan until you have 2 years of tax returns and 2 full years in business. Obviously, you can get investor loans, ground up construction, DSCR loans, any type of investment loan. But if you want to buy a house for yourself, then you would have wished that your LLC was formed the day you got started. Because what happened for me is I closed my first deal and I didn't open my LLC for a few months. So when it came time 2 years later, I had many deals closed. I had money built up. My wife and I were ready to buy a house. We couldn't get a traditional residential mortgage because our LLC wasn't 2 years old, even though we had 2 years of tax returns. So we were not able to buy a personal residence. So you do not need an LLC to get started. And again, if you have a W-2 or some other form of income, you won't really, have to worry about that specific thing. But to answer the question, do you need an LLC? The answer is no. You do not need an LLC. You can do land wholesaling in your personal name. The purchase and sale agreement will be between the seller, whether they are an LLC, a corporation, or an individual, and then you in your personal name. So my first few agreements that I sent were, as the buyer was Junior Lee.